Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome back to Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Alan Miller, and we have a gymnast here today by the name of Mike Obermueller. And I say he's a gymnast because he's going to teach us how to flip a district. And Mike, as most of you know, has been here before numerous times when he was in the legislature as a candidate for Congress 2 years ago, and now, once again, the same faces in the same race, except what does flip a district mean?
Well, it really means there's an opportunity here for people to take a good second look at Congressman Kline's voting record over the last decade. As you know, HBO TV personality Bill Maher has had a big bracket of 16 Congress people that he decided to decide which one was, in his opinion, the worst of the worst. And he selected Congressman Kline for his final four and eventually for his champion. And is going to be shining a giant spotlight on Congressman Kline's record over the next few weeks, and we're excited about the chance to have that dialogue with people about what Congressman Kline's been voting on out there. I really think that's his worst case scenario of people understanding what he's been doing for the last decade.
So it's interesting that this Congressional District number 2 in Minnesota, of all 435 congressional districts, was singled out by Bill Maher, who was very politically oriented, as the one most in need of new representation for the coming year. And Congressman Kline has been around for quite a while. He used to be on this show quite often, as a matter of fact. And going back to before the Persian Gulf and the war, the Iraqi war, etc., which he always used to tell me he knew things that I didn't know, and that would justify the weapons of mass destruction and the other problems, the biological weapons, all the things that never materialized, and we're still looking for. He and Dick Cheney are still looking for. So how's the campaign going?
Well, we feel really strong about where we are right now. We've put ourselves in the right kind of position to take advantage of a big break like what Bill Maher is going to do. But I think it's important to recognize that, Bill Maher isn't going to win the race, and frankly, he's not actually going to have the big impact on the race. The big impact comes from the voters here in the district. When they start paying attention to what Mr. Kline's been doing out there in Washington, they don't like what it is very much. And so we feel really good about the fact that we've been knocking on a lot of doors. We've been doing the work on the phones to make sure we're touching these voters one by one and having those conversations. We've raised good dollars to make sure we could have the dialogue going forward. And I think it really is all going to center on his conduct. His 54 plus votes to repeal or defund the Affordable Care Act. He's still trying to privatize Social Security and voucherize Medicare. He's got votes against women's economic security. He's trying to make college more expensive for kids. Those votes don't match up with this district. We want, in this district, a strong middle class. We want to make sure people have money in their pockets to go out there and keep our economy charged up. Congressman Kline's getting in the way of that, and that's why they're going to replace him, I believe, in November.
And it's interesting because it's a tough year in terms of statistics in the past, so you really have to get the vote out. that becomes really important to you.
I think that's right, and and the thing is, there's plenty of votes here. If people come out and vote, frankly, on both sides of the aisle, and we have the strong dialogue out here, I'm going to do great, because when people are choosing between Congressman Kline and me, I think they're going to choose me because I got a better chance of actually going out there and having a positive impact on the middle class, as opposed to Congressman Kline's model, which is a top-down model where he gives huge tax breaks away to millionaires and hopes eventually it trickles down onto the rest of us. And so I think when we get people out to vote, people are going to choose some better leadership for the future, and that's really what we're hoping for, and I hope everyone shows up and votes on November 4th.
Congressman Kline had a really admirable record as a Marine pilot, no question about that. And what occurred to me, I know he gets $170,000 plus for being a member of Congress. Is he also drawing a pension from the Marines? Is his wife also, who was an officer in the service, drawing a pension? Are these people, in effect, getting about $300,000 a year from the government and then trying to emasculate the government?
Well, I think, obviously Congressman Kline's pay is a public record out there in terms of that. But if you look at what he's done over the last decade or so in terms of income from the federal government, it's been close to $2 million. And I don't begrudge him for having that. He's earned his salary. He's working hard out there, I'm sure. What I do have trouble with is the fact that he's then turning around and saying that other people who need a little help from the government are takers. So if you look at people who are trying to get food stamps, just trying to feed their kids, they deserved a little extra help to get up as well. And he voted against food stamps for kids. So don't take $2 million from the state or from the federal government and then turn around and tell people who just want to feed their kids that they're takers.
So hypocritical, really, and it's something that I can't wrap my head around. Now, you say that Bill Maher won't make the difference in this campaign, but the fact of the matter is it has focused national attention on this district. That can't hurt.
No, I think it is, and it's exactly the kind of spotlight that Congressman Kline, I think, should be worried about, because the votes that he's taken over and over again out there, that up until the redistricting put the seat in play and good candidates coming after him like me, he was able to kind of do what he wanted to out there, but now those votes are coming up, catching up to him a little bit. I think, for example, just with the Affordable Care Act, as you know, we went on offense on the Affordable Care Act, one of the few Democratic challengers in the country to start saying we ought to start working to improve this rather than continue to try to run away from it. Congressman Kline's still in the repeal camp, beating the repeal drum.
Well, they say that if you repeat something over and over again, and it's the same result each time, that's a sign of insanity. Now, the Republican not the Republican administration, but the Republicans in the Congress, in the House, have voted now, 54 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act instead of really focusing on what people need. I mean, if I had my way, it would be single payer, but that doesn't seem to be in the offing at the moment, like all the other industrialized countries in one form or another. But we have the Affordable Care Act. It's not going to go away. People are happy that their children up to age 26, particularly in this economy, can be on their policy. And people are happy that pre-existing conditions won't wipe you off. There's so much plus going forward, and it looks like the Affordable Care Act, the more people get on it, is getting cheaper as well.
Yeah, and I think one of the big issues, and this is a big contrast between Congressman Kline and myself, because he's still in the repeal camp with really no alternative that he wants to put forward, just basically let's undo what we're doing here. I think it's really important for people to understand what it means if that happens, and it's some of the things you suggested. Kids can't stay on their insurance, but it also means that these large for-profit insurance companies can kick you off when you're sick. It means seniors are going to pay more for their prescription drugs because the Affordable Care Act starts closing the Medicare Part D donut hole. It means that women are going to go back to paying more than men for health care. And those are the real impacts in this district. And in fact, we've talked to literally hundreds of people here in the district who have told me their ACA story. A lady named Sue who told me about her being diagnosed with a terminal illness and having to choose between her mortgage payment and her health insurance payment. And she chose her health insurance payment. Fortunately, she's still with us, but the Affordable Care Act allowed her to have both again. She's back in her home. She lost her home, and now she's got a chance to come back and have a stable place to live. I mean, these are real impacts. And we're not going to go back to a 4-year-old fight. These guys you've proven your political point. They don't like the Affordable Care Act. I get it. They shut down the government for 16 days as a political stunt to show us that.
Which set us back millions and tens of millions of dollars.
Absolutely. And you got to think about what it really means to go back to repeal this law. And I think if people look at what the alternative is, which is we go back to the for-profit insurance companies calling all the shots, they don't want to go back. They want to improve it, and there are things we can do to improve it. Cost control models have to improve. I'm not a big fan of the medical device tax, but there are things we can do to improve it. But let's have that discussion rather than 54 repeated votes to undo a law that we've already got on the books.
Now, are you going to debate him, or is he ducking debates?
Well, we've made plenty of offers to do it, and we'll continue to push on that. So far, there hasn't been one locked in, and I'm hopeful that he will. We've got a lot of things to discuss. It's really his record that he should be, if he's proud of it, he should come out and explain why he is. I don't think he's proud of voting against fair pay for women. I don't think he's really proud of 2 votes on constitutional amendments.
And we're going to talk about some of those things.
Sure.
But for instance, and the reason John Kline, who has been on this show probably over 24 times, maybe closer to 36, hasn't come back because about 8 years ago he wouldn't debate, and I suggested that it wasn't consistent with his military record. It was sort of an act of cowardice on his part, being afraid to debate. The people are entitled to a debate. He said at that point, I won't be back on the show, and he hasn't been back since. He's welcome to come back anytime, including in this race if he wants, but I haven't heard from him. Let's talk about, you mentioned women's, equal pay for women. What about that?
Well, I think one of the key factors in a strong economy going forward is definitely got to be tied to women's economic security. And the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act helped put some ground rules in place. Congressman Kline voted against that. That would have really helped with more, and it is passed, and we're seeing the benefits of equal pay for equal work there, but we've got a long way to go. He's sitting on the Paycheck Fairness Act in his committee right now. That's a bill that in many states you can still be fired if you're a woman for asking your male counterpart how much they make. And we ought to put a stop to that, because that keeps women making less than men. The minimum wage is another great example.
The last time I looked was 77% the average female salary for the average male salary.
Right, and so that is if you do things like put equal pay for equal work into practice, not just into rhetoric, you can actually make a big impact on building the middle class. And another factor is the minimum wage. We made some good strides here in Minnesota. We raised it to $9.50 over the coming years, but we need to raise the federal minimum wage too. The
fact of the matter is, if you're working $9.50, say $10 an hour for a 40-hour week, you're making all of $400 from which you pay your federal taxes. And tell me how it's possible to support a family, let alone you as an individual, on that amount of money in today's economy.
Right, and you really can. I mean, I do favor pushing the federal minimum wage up. I think we can get to 10-10 with the folks that we have out there now who can make those decisions if I go out and join them. And that's still barely enough to feed your family along the way. And so, we want a strong economy. You got to have people with money in their pockets going into these stores and creating demand for new employees. The job creators are the middle class and the working class folks who are out there doing those things. And raising the minimum wage, although it would be hard to go up to 11 or whatever it probably needs to get to the poverty line even, we definitely can make some big steps forward and put real money in the pockets of people who are just trying to feed their families.
And obviously, when people are able to feed their family, when they are able to spend money, it helps the entire economy. Now, is it fair to say that you don't believe that helping the top 1-2% by paying less taxes leads to a trickle-down whereby everybody does better?
Yeah, well, look, there's no evidence.
The Reagan state of mind.
Right. I mean, we've tried that. It doesn't work. The reality is, when you give huge tax breaks away to millionaires, it doesn't end up with a stronger middle class. That's why we're now seeing this big economic divide between those who have just millions and millions of dollars and those who don't have very much at all.
It does help their portfolio, though, because they invest it. They don't create jobs with it. They invest it, and it certainly helps them individually. I mean, when Obama took office, and certainly there are reasons that I have that I would disagree with Obama on, many decisions. When he took office, the stock market was what? At 7,000
Yeah,
or something
7,000 or
like that?
8,000.
Today, what is it, 17,000? Hello, isn't there a message there for somebody?
Yeah, and obviously the vast majority of the dollars in the stock market are at the are with people who are at the top end of that economic spectrum. And again, the goal ought to be in our country to make sure that we've got a level playing field so people who work hard can be successful. And we ought to build back the middle class. And that the keys to that are making sure that we've got a strong college education system that's affordable. It's making sure women have economic health security, and making sure that we improve the Affordable Care Act so people have access to affordable and reliable health care. When we do those things, we'll have a strong middle class, and we'll be able to keep the country moving forward. If we don't, we're going to end up in the same situation we were, with more recessions to come and more economic disparity.
I saw an alarming statistic out there that there is something like $1.2 trillion wrapped up in student loans, and that's keeping people from being able to buy houses. That's keeping people in debt into their 40s, as my daughter was. It's keeping people back from getting ahead, which is what we all want to do. Now, Al Franken proposed a bill to lower the interest on student loans. Has Kline taken a position on student loans? He's with an education committee. Isn't he a chair of an education committee?
Yep, Congressman Kline is the chair of the House Education Committee, and frankly, no one's been in a better position to make college more affordable than him, and unfortunately has gone the wrong direction. He carried a bill and really promoted a bill that would have doubled student loan interest rates, making it more expensive for students to go to college. That's absolutely the wrong way to go. You know, we had a society not too long ago where we funded our education systems with grants, and we've decided somehow along the way that we should shift this over to a debt-based system. The reality is we have to invest in these students, we have to invest in these kids, because they're the future.
We're
the next
falling
middle
behind.
Class. We are falling behind.
Statistically, to other countries, we are falling behind. What's the message there? That it's become too expensive for kids to go to school and graduate. It's become too expensive to get an education. So much of the world recognizes this and gives free education to their students. And when you see the people in Asia running circles around us, and when you see people in other countries statistically doing so much better, you would think that that would resonate in the brains of some Congresspeople, particularly those who are on education committees and interested or profess to be interested in education, but yet we keep falling further behind.
Yeah, well, it certainly resonates with me, and that's why I know we have to make sure college is more affordable for kids, and for along the ways, you know, to get after that, student loan interest rate has to be lower. We've got to keep working forward, whether it's Elizabeth Warren's bill or Senator Franken working on that as well. We have to make sure that you can refinance that debt or spread your payments out, so when you do have your debt, you can afford to pay it back over a period of time. We got to have a lot more transparency in our school. Congressman Kline's been out doing a lot of help for our for-profit schools, which I think there are several bad actors in there who should not be trying to take money from our kids. They're basically equity
stripping. We've seen that locally, where a couple have been shut down.
Right.
These for-profit schools, and I guess I'm a little prejudiced teaching in a public college, but I don't see where these for-profit colleges are producing results for their students, and they're saddling them with tremendous amount of debt while feathering in their own nest at the same time.
Right, and I love choice in education. We need more and more choices out there for people, but we've got some bad actors there, as you suggested. That, you know, if you go to a school and you end up with no degree at the end or no valuable skills that you've learned along the way, you basically just had the money taken away, and it's
or
especially
a meaningless degree, which is what's happening in many cases.
A piece of paper there, and it's especially troublesome when you think about our soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. They're using their GI benefits. Some of them are going to these bad apple for-profit schools, and they're basically having that benefit stripped away from them. They go through use it up along the way. They end up with no tangible result. And that's really troublesome. And Congressman Kline, again, should be fixing that. I will fix that when we get there. We will have regulations to make sure that, and the transparency that we need to make sure that people get their value of their dollars for education.
Woman's right to choose. I thought that was put to bed some time ago. it's still around in some minds. Where's Kline sit on that?
Yeah, well, I think, as you know, we've got to have an opportunity for people to make their own medical choices. There's no question about it. I hope these are decisions that are best made between a woman or doctor and hopefully a supportive family. Congressman Kline wants the people in Washington, D.C. to make those decisions for you. He actually has been on the wrong side of trying to make it harder for women to get access to contraceptives. If you want to reduce abortions, you got to have people who can not be pregnant when they don't want to be pregnant, and he should be doing that. Also got on the wrong side of the bill, trying to redefine the definition of rape. And I see these are things that show that he doesn't understand or maybe doesn't respect the important role that women are playing in our society. And I'm going to be different than that, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to really show the differences on that point in particular.
Where are you different on the environment?
Well, I believe that climate change is real. It's happening. Humans are causing it, and we've got a chance to really take some steps forward, and we've got to do it quickly, but to put ourselves back on the right track. We can fight about, if we want, whether or not the science is there or not. There really is no science. There's a bunch of science that says it's happening and a little tiny bit of science that says it's not. And so it's not really a fair
I call that the faux
fight.
science. There's 99 point whatever it is of scientists who talk about climate change, who talk about global warming. Well, that word has now gone. It's now climate change. And there's a small percentage, many of whom are paid by the same companies or individuals that stand to profit if things stay the same.
Yeah, but again, the point is, regardless of what you believe on that side, there's no question something's happening out there, and we ought to do something to actually address this issue. And one of those big challenges is making sure that we change our energy policy. We have to move away from things that we burn and move to things that are more renewable or more sustainable. And that doesn't mean that tomorrow we should just turn the switch off and do something else. But if you want to turn a big ship around, you got to keep constant, steady pressure on it. This is what we need to be doing with moving towards renewables and really investing the research dollars into whatever the next big energy source is, whatever that is beyond the current renewables that we know. We just can't stay on the path that we're on now and have our society work. We're going to have a big political issue here with people who can't get water where they need to. They can't, we're going to have people moving. We could be losing ground. There's a lot of stuff that could happen here, and we've got to start planning for it now and stop pretending that it's not happening just because it makes a few dollars right now.
In the days of Franklin Roosevelt, he formed the CCC, and we made tremendous strides with the infrastructure of this country. And that infrastructure is now, 70 years later, crumbling. It needs help desperately. Another move such as that would put thousands, tens of thousands of people to work, and we wouldn't have Lafayette Street bridges that either have to be replaced or spend millions to repair inadequately. So that's just a local example. We've had it with other bridges. We had it with the 35W bridge, which fell into the Mississippi River and killed 13 people. These people who say, well, it's not our problem. It is government's problem. There are certain things I think that government has to provide. Certainly safety, public safety, a decent economy, and care for the infrastructure. We're going to leave that for what? Our grandchildren? We're going to leave them problems with that very short-sighted view.
Yeah, and I think the real challenge is we've got folks out in Congress who can't look beyond their next election, and Congressman Kline's among those folks. We have to, transportation funding and the infrastructure you're talking about has to be thought of in terms of 50 and 100 years. What are we doing here? What are we doing next, on down the line? We haven't put our dollars there. In fact, this is a place where I think I really have a challenge with what the president did with the stimulus package when we were coming through the Great Recession. If we had done and targeted our dollars into the infrastructure building, we would have put all those construction workers that were sitting on the bench back to work right away. Take, for example, the lock and dam system up and down the Mississippi. We know we're going to reconstruct that in the next 20 years. Why didn't we get started on that when we had all those folks who were sitting around who weren't able to work, and we were paying unemployment insurance? They would have much rather been productive than sitting on the bench. and we didn't take that step. But we can't just keep pushing these things down the line. We have to make real investments in these things now, and that will pay off in the future for us. That's how if you want to build a middle class, we got to have the ability for these trucks to get the goods to market. We got to make sure our business owners have a chance to have the infrastructure they need that can make things productive and get workers back and forth. A lot of people in this district, commuting into the downtowns, that makes a big difference.
And we see it also with light rail. We see it as we're taking steps in that regard. I remember when Tim Pawlenty was here as a legislator, how opposed he was to light rail, notwithstanding the fact that he cut the ribbon and rode on the first train. And that light rail has paid for itself, is paying for itself, and has proved to be a boon. Now we have it with St. Paul into Minneapolis. And you see that we need more. We need our highways that are crumbling to be reconstructed or at least repaired. Eisenhower saw that when he was president with the National Highway System. I don't understand how people can look the other way.
Yeah, and Alan, it's really about making sure we put the right piece of infrastructure in the right place. We need roads. Clearly we're not giving up our cars anytime soon, but if we can find bus rapid transit like we've got coming out of the South Metro, where that makes sense, light rail, where that makes sense, and really start building up this infrastructure. Places like Denver, who put the investment on the front end, are booming in their economy right now. And that's as a result of the fact that they made smart investments now, and they're reaping the benefits. And we keep pushing those things off down the road because they're politically tough decisions to make. But we're unfortunately not seeing the benefits that come from those investments. And so putting the right thing in the right spot is really key.
What about protecting Social Security and Medicare? That's another of the Republicans' war cries, that they want to privatize it. Well, what would have happened if Social Security was privatized when we hit the recession?
Yeah, and I don't think anyone would have wanted their Social Security in that market as things were crashing at the end there. It's really troublesome, I think, for those who think we should privatize Social Security, or all these votes in the various Paul Ryan budgets that would have put the Medicare system into a voucher program. What those do is they really undercut the ability for seniors to retire with dignity. And when you work hard and you have worked your whole life, you deserve the opportunity to retire with dignity. And I'm not going to stand for that. If there are challenges we have there, in terms of the dollars, we have to actually look at that. I think in terms of Social Security, if the dollars aren't coming in, we should look at the folks who are making the $300,000 or more a year. We got to talk about taking the cap off of the Social Security tax there if we need those dollars to shore things up. Medicare, we've got to stop the $20 billion in fraud that happens, the fraud and waste that goes on in that system. You can shore that program back up again with our current things and not have to take away the benefits that are there for people, that people are relying on.
And make drugs, pharmaceuticals more tolerable to purchase, not put conditions on whether you can negotiate the price or not.
Right, and the Affordable Care Act took a big step forward in closing the donut hole for seniors. That, as you remember, the Republicans did pass the Part D benefit there, but they didn't pay for it. They put it on the credit card, and as a result, to make the economics work, they left a big hole in the middle for seniors to keep paying, and the Affordable Care Act starts to close that down. But until we get those cost controls in place, and until we stop the waste and the fraud that's going on, people are going to continue to look at this program, and they're going to continue to try to poke holes at it. We ought to shore it up. We ought to do it right. It ought to be bipartisan, and it will be if I get a chance to go out there and serve.
Mike Obermueller is running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. It's a district designated as the flipadistrict in the United States, and not by accident did that happen. So good luck to you, and in this campaign, as we move forward, we'll see if we can flip a district.
All right,
Mike,
thank you.
thanks.